So I've seen several videos on how to align this blade, specifically the backside. This is the backside, how to move it back and forth, left to right, just to be able to get it aligned correctly. But one of the things that I didn't see was how to align the front, especially if you mess up like I did and you end up having to having that front blade shifted all the way to the right against the miter plate. So one of the things that you have to look at is the way that this system works with Delta is there's 2 to 3 different pivot points, and this is the way that I see it working. This right here is this arc piece right there, where this sort of sled moves back and forth, to be able to rotate on an angle. And then you have this piece, and then these is the vertical elevator tube going straight down. So the motor attaches not to these, but attaches to a similar piece down below. And I don't know if you can see that right there, right? So a lot of the videos that suggest to be able to adjust this say to release these 2 bolts, actually these 2 bolts over here on the back, to be able to move the entire assembly back and forth. But sometimes, in some instances, when you do that, the motor may still not move enough to be able to make a difference. So you may have to release these 2 screws over here. And the problem with that is that because that is a point of reference for this to be able to move, to pivot from, if you do that and it's under tension, it may buckle. And so this angle right here, what happens is, if you release this is the front. And this is the back. So these are the ones that are suggested to be able to move the blade back and forth. And it uses this as a pivot point so that the motor can move back and forth. So the problem is, if you release this, because there's 3 different points, this may buckle slightly, and you're going to see it if that happens to you and your blade shifts over, from the front and shifts over to the side of your curve blade. You will see that this space right here will increase, and it will move out, and it will be larger. So being in space about, I was 1/16, that seems to be acceptable. Over here it might be about maybe a little bit less than that. But if this is way out, you will see it also, this way. So in that instance, how do you get it squared away? And what I had to do was basically, I had to brace, put a clamp right on this member and against the table underneath over here. So this gets shifted over, and on the pressure, this is, puts pressure this way. Then I grabbed a stick, with a point, and just enough clearance in there to be able to put one of the corners of the stick right there on that, right here, and then give it a few tippy tap taps, and this piece will pivot back to where it sits on the sled again. So just hit it in there, firmly, but not too bad with a mallet. And then these pieces will shift back and try to sit again correctly on that sled. So in this case, by doing that, the blade got moved over almost to the center. And that's a pretty big clearance right there. Now you can mess around with the back. This is not fully aligned yet, but before it was hitting against this, and the tooth were hitting this. So yeah, so just remember that by putting some force over here, really what you're doing is you're affecting the piece at the top if this is loose. If this is tight and you don't lose this, and you only work with the back, then that's not a problem, because this is just really pivoting off of this vertical member, right? But if you do lose this, you loosen it up, then this will make collapse like this. And in order for you to be able to get it back, you need to be able to get this under pressure this way, so that way towards, and that's the front, so that way with a clamp, and then may need to give it a few taps in here to be able to get this piece back in there. And the way to be able to put that clamp is I put it right here, so you might be able to see right there, not where it would not allow me to access these screws. I will still be able to tighten them with the clamp on, but right here on the vertical, and the clamp came all the way over here and got a clamp right here, so on the side of the table. So you should go straight down under this, and then right here, and then pull this way. And that allowed this to move this way. Few taps, get it seated there, tighten it once this is in good place. And now with this whole front seated correctly, now you can go and do the other procedures that several videos out there on how to move the back. And just make sure that you don't loosen this again, and you can just mess with the with the other vertical and the other side. But just remember, actually, when people talk about the motor moving back and forth, really what is moving is these pieces against that sled, that arc right there. So what you're doing is you're moving that's putting pressure against this, and this should shift over slightly, which that means that if you have to move the back over here, if you loosen those screws over here, you could, if you need to move it out, the blade this way, you could just give it a tap right here, and this will shift over slightly. Obviously, if you have to move it the other way, then yes, you may need to move or push, from underneath, have the motor move, either push to the front or pull to the back, and that way, this piece can, sort of play a little bit in there. But yeah, but that was, I just wanted to make a video because I didn't see any idea, or there were a few things that people were suggesting using clamps, or just give it a notch and whatnot. But and that may work. But if your table saw was under tension, like in this case, and not sitting correctly, then you may need to use a clamp, couple of clamps maybe, and get that seated right in there to be able to move the front of the blade. So All right, and that is that.